As a father of three, I can confidently say that parenting is a journey that is filled with immense joy. But let's be honest, it comes with its fair share of challenges. Sometimes it gets so tough. You and I want our children to thrive. We want to raise kids that are resilient, kids that would walk in the path that God has set for them. But how do we guide these children without strangling them? How do we do so without stifling them, making it so difficult for them to live their lives? How do you say no? And how do I say no to my child without making them feel like they are unloved? When we talk about boundaries, most of the times, it comes off like we are really setting rigid rules for children to live out. But the question is that how can we have boundaries such that it will communicate to our kids that we love them? It will communicate to them that, hey, you know what? This is for your safety. This is for your security. This is for your freedom. I am your host, Daniel Laryea, and welcome back to another episode of Living the Sermon podcast where we dive into meaningful conversations. I just want to live in the sermon. I can't put none of it to work. I am thrilled to have you join us. Today I have a special guest. She is a Christian, a passionate educator, and she works with the District of Columbia Public Schools. One of the things that I learned about her is the fact that she has a big heart for mentoring teenagers so they can become corporate and social responsible individuals. She'll be sharing with us wisdom nuggets, biblical principles, and relatable stories that would help us to approach boundaries with renewed purpose. Welcome, Kukua.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
You mind sharing a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I'm Kukua. I'm a Christian first. I am married for about 16 years now. I have
Wow.
2 children, blessed with a boy and a girl. I am an educator. I'm a passionate educator, and I have served in various capacities when it comes to education. And I think that one of my passion is parenting because as I've worked with teenagers, maybe from ages 12 through to about 19, over the years, I have learned so much from them and from their families. And as a parent myself, I pick all these things and I incorporate them into my own parenting journey, which has also made me look back at how I was raised. And for a while, for years now, this is something I haven't stopped thinking about. I have realized that parenting is not just a walk in the park. It's hard work. It's tough. And for me, parenting is a calling.
Mm.
So I approach it very seriously and I learn the best I can. I when it's a parenting book, I want to go for it. I want to learn. I want to research. And I think that these are also discussions I love to have.
Parenting is a calling. So for those of us who didn't think about that and just went into marriage without really thinking about that, we need to start asking
It's a
ourselves a
big
lot of
calling.
questions. But I do agree it is. Meeting an educator, I cannot, start without asking you, what's the best advice you've ever received?
That's tricky because I've received so many good advices. But I think that sometimes you also get advice from experience,
Mm.
right? And so if there's anything I've learned and I'm still walking in and learning and growing in, it's about being patient. Being patient is something that has taught me a great deal. I've heard from adults, I've heard from people who have mentored me, also seen in my walk. When you are patient, it really teaches you things and it shows
That's
you
right.
things.
So let's cut through the chase and start really honing in on the subject for the day.
Yeah.
When we talk about boundaries, what does it mean? Because anytime I hear the term boundaries, like I mentioned earlier, it comes off like rigid rules that we are putting in place. You know what? If you do this, I'll punish you. If you do this, you are free. Can you just share a little bit about what it means when we talk about boundaries?
It's interesting. I'll tell you the first thing that comes to me when you ask me what boundaries is. It is safety in freedom, okay? Safety in freedom. But there's so many things I've also learned from boundaries. And I know that generally we say boundaries are limits. right?
Mm-hmm.
And one very powerful Christian psychologist I like to read from is Dr. Henry Cloud. He will define boundaries as when to say yes and how to say no.
Mm. Mm.
When to say yes and how to say no. So basically, there are limits. Yes, we have freedom within limits, but you need to understand that in those limits that either you are setting for yourself or you are setting for somebody else in a relationship, for your children as a parent, you are giving them limits within some confined space. And you are telling them that, hey, you can be free and be free within this confined space. And why do we do that? We do that for safety, if you would understand
That's
what I
right.
mean. We do that for safety. So for me, boundaries is just safety and freedom or limits within a safe space. And there are different ones. There could be physical boundaries, there could be emotional boundaries. And we know even where we are sitting and having this, there are boundaries. The walls, right? There are boundaries. And there's a reason why we have put ourselves in this space so we don't have interruptions. The thing is recorded nicely. That's physical. Now, when you look at us as human beings, I am not joined to somebody else. I'm not joined to you physically. Even how God created me is a boundary. There's a reason why you cannot have Siamese twins live forever and ever. And people would say there's a problem, there's a complication, there should be a boundary.
That's right.
So we have emotional boundaries. Mentally, you can have your boundaries. You can have time availability boundaries. We can go on and on. And for me, when it even comes to my faith, I have boundaries. There's certain discussions I will not have if it is not what the word of God is telling me it is. If it is blasphemous, I wouldn't want to engage or have my boundary. So boundaries are very important and it works in all spaces.
I mean, I like the fact that you mentioned a Christian author. And that alone, brought this question to me that thinking about it from the Christian perspective, right? We know if you read the books from Genesis, looking at from the Garden of Eden, right? All the way to the Ten Commandments, you would
Yes.
agree that God has established himself as
Yes.
the ultimate boundary setter,
Yes, Daniel.
right?
You're
So
right.
how does his approach to boundaries, his yes, how he says yes to us and his no and all that to us, how does that inform your own parenting philosophy?
This is a very important point. And I would add that as a Christian, one of the things that guide me is that if God is doing it, if God is saying it, then he should be my model. Some of us, I mean, you've never been a parent before until you become one,
That's true.
right? It doesn't have to be biological. It could be you taking care of people. It could be you having your own children. It could be anything. So parenting just becomes new to you once you become it. But then who teaches you to parent? If you've had a good parent, then you say, oh, I have an example. But our earthly parents are not perfect. They're flawed, just like you and I are. And so, yes, they are flawed. Yes, they may have made mistakes. As we grow, you realize that you know your parents better and you're able to pick out
That's
the
right.
mistakes they've
That's right.
made. And I tell you what, I saw a very interesting post. Somebody said that, oh Lord, let me remember. The person said that just like you figured out your parents' mistakes as you're growing up, your children are also
We
going to
figured
figure
that's
out
right.
your mistakes. So you better be careful, right? That spoke to me. It spoke to me so much. I said, yes, my earthly parents are not perfect, but they raised me so well. They raised me the best way they could. They gave me what they could. They taught me what they knew. But hey, there's one parent. There is our Heavenly Father, and we call him Father for a reason. He's perfect. So if he's done this and he caused this parenting to be because he said that be fruitful and multiply, So we are going to have children. How do we raise these children? He gives us rules. He gives us commands. He gives us guides. Then he must be a good parent. So
That's
going back
right.
to the Bible, right from creation, there are boundaries. Right from creation, when God said, let us make man, or even before making man, when God said, let us separate darkness from light, there's a boundary there. When God said, let us separate the waters from above, from the waters from the below, that is a boundary.
That's true.
Right? So you go through creation and you wonder, oh my God, boundaries. Then I think about how God made me as a human being, how intricate the things in our body, our system, the anatomy of the human body. The veins are in a certain place, the organs are in places. Once those shift, there's a problem,
That's so true.
right?
That's right.
There are boundaries. Now look at this, our God. Look at how he made things. It doesn't have to be straight, but orderly. There are boundaries. When he gave the Israelites, anytime he was talking to the Israelites about inheritance, about territories, when you look through the Bible, they're territories. He said, I'll give you this. I'll give you up to this point. When he shared the land, there are territories. And you know what I thought about this morning?
Share
I
it.
said, Lord, in this world, anytime we've had a problem with territories, there's a war.
That's true.
And this is something I hadn't thought about. It was just this morning.
That's right.
I was just thinking, like, God, look at Ukraine and Russia. Look at Israel and Palestine. Look at India and Pakistan. I mean, you can keep naming and naming and
That's
naming.
true.
Anytime there's a territorial confusion, there's war. Because we have decided that something that God said it should be, we are crossing it. Let me get even deeper. Now, you're growing up as a young man or a young woman. God has given us freedom within limits. You know that I'm not supposed to fornicate. I'm supposed to get married properly. Immediately you cross that boundary, there's a problem. You
There
can
is.
be successful no matter what. You can raise the child single-handedly. You can do whatever. But once the thing out of wedlock, and hey, God has forgiven you, but you sit down yourself and you say, this was a mistake.
The scar would be there.
And I tell you, just about a month ago, I met this beautiful lady and we were in a discussion and she said, you know what? One thing I want to tell every child growing up, never fornicate. Make sure you marry properly. Said, because I've lived it and I've seen that it doesn't help. And then my sister told her, she said, I think I should organize you so you can speak to our children. I said, you see, because God has laid down boundaries. And so boundaries are just giving us freedom and joy in limits. We think boundaries are strict. They are not strict. See, Adam and Eve, God gave them everything in Eden. Everything in Eden. And then he said, I give you everything for food. I give you that. I give you this. You have everything. Just don't touch this one thing. Don't. That is a boundary.
That's right.
And they touched it. And look at us. Sometimes you wake up and you're going to work. It's like, oh my, why do I have to even wake up and go? Because of one person who decided, I am going to cross this boundary. Look at all of us. And so it is so important that biblically we understand. If we have the foundation, it helps us to understand that this thing we are doing is not bad. If God says, I shouldn't do this, and he's told me, don't do it, because if you touch this thing, you are going to see everything. It's sin. You're going to die. And you see, he told me not to touch it. And he told me why I say you shouldn't touch it. And then I went to touch it. Look at me. Look at us. Boundaries. Now, when we go even deeper, let's say I've stayed in Old Testament for too long. So let me go to Jesus now.
That's right.
And
That's right.
you see that, oh my, this is God who came as flesh to dwell amongst us. There's no high priest like Jesus is, right? But he had boundaries. Let me give you some examples. Did Jesus heal everybody?
Oh,
He didn't. Jesus always stayed with the crowd. Sometimes he retreated. There was a time they were really going to kill him. And he knew he had to be killed, but he knew it wasn't his time. So Bible says that he sneaked out of the crowd because it wasn't his time to die. There are times he's with the crowd, and the Bible says he will retreat. They'll say, Lord, the people seek you. Well, I have to go to the other side. One day he went to the temple, and they had changed the temple, the purpose for the temple. His father's house. There was merchandising going on. He said, what? In my father's house, I'm not going to allow this. He said no. Bible says that he whipped them out.
yep.
He was angry. He said, this shouldn't happen here. It's a no. You don't turn my father's house that is supposed to be a house of prayer into something else. You remember I talked about my faith? I said that there's certain things when it comes to my faith and you want to blaspheme, I won't allow you. Then we will end the discussion. That is my. So it's biblical, it's scriptural. We see it. We see it in the life of Jesus. We see it in the Bible. Jesus didn't entrust himself to people all the time. He had limits when it even came to the people he fellowshipped with. He had limits. So if we should give a biblical foundation to boundaries, these are boundaries from a biblical point of view.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a
I
lot,
mean,
and I can tell you that I'm seeing the need and the importance for us to really work within boundaries.
yes.
It apply and it cuts across
Yes.
everything that we do.
Everything. Everything. And I'm glad that I get to share some examples with you as we go along. One day, my son asked me a question. He said, Mom, can adults do whatever they like? I smiled at him. I said, Jay, no. You can do whatever you like within limits. Then I stopped because I was trying to explain to him it wasn't working. So I stopped and I asked him, I said, have you seen when I go to bed? I said, have you seen when I wake up? Have you seen that sometimes when I'm doing certain things, you're not supposed to come close to me, or you're not supposed to be here, or you don't disturb? Have you seen how I live my life? I said, yes. I said, do you think that I could do otherwise? I said, well, we can do everything, but it's not everything that is lawful. And then I asked him, I said, have you realized that sometimes when you're watching certain things, we'll say, maybe dad will say, I don't think you should be watching stuff with cuss words, or I don't think, do you think that I watch everything I like? Why don't I watch pornography? Why don't I watch certain things? Why don't I? What keeps me is the fact that as a human being, as an adult, I have an authority over me. My God who keeps watch over me. I have an authority. What do I want to fill my mind with? What is that authority saying about what I fill my mind with? Then I said, can I sleep at any time I want? Said, yes. I said, but do you think if I sleep at this time, I can wake up how early I wake up every day and do what I want to do? He says, yeah. And I said, it's for my own good. I have a routine. I wake up at a certain time, I do my quiet time, I do whatever, I hit the gym. I have a routine. I need it in the mornings because I work with teenagers. I want to be in the best frame of mind mentally, emotionally. So I know that, hey, I'm talking to God. It's so important to me at a particular time when everything is still, when everything is quiet. I can meditate, I can pray, I can hit the gym, work on myself. That alone works on me to be able to face my teenagers. I work with so many teenagers every day. I cannot lose my emotions on them.
That's right.
Life happens to all of us. But how come when I'm even in the valley, I'm able to stand tall and move? Because I have a God I've called on. And I needed to set a boundary to be able to call on that God when I had to, before I faced the battles, as I went out there to work with them. So it's so important to know that boundaries are not stifling. And as parents, how can we raise our children to understand this thing is freedom? that gives you security.
Mm.
It helps you, it makes you healthier. And I have been healthier since I embraced boundaries because I used to be very sacrificial.
Mm.
Oh Lord help me. Very and my kind of person, when I'm committed, I'm committed. So sometimes I said
You're
I'll
preaching to the
do it.
choir.
As I'm killing myself, I'm doing it. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Then one day, God just helped me. If I don't take it, I'll die before my time.
Mm.
Look, I had terrible migraines. Terrible migraines. But immediately I said, hey, lifestyle change. This is what I'm going to do. Once I understood boundaries properly, then I understood that there's nothing wrong with saying no. If you can't do it at this time, you can do it at this day. Can I do it another time when I can? Oh, it's a complete no. Can I see you? No, you can't see me. I'm with my family. Oh, I want to be alone. I want to sleep. It's okay. I
Yeah.
mean, I want to retreat. There's nothing wrong with it. Now, when you have boundaries in your life, it gives you proper control of you. And you are able to actually do better for the people who love you.
I like the example that you gave about your child. I know there are a lot of parents out there that certainly would like to put boundaries in place for their kids. But sometimes it's the difficulty is explaining it to them in a way that they wouldn't see it as, you stifling or restricting them. How do we go about really explaining these boundaries to our children where they would see it as part of God's design and also a way that they would know that you love them and that's why you're putting those measures in place?
You know what? At a certain age, maybe the toddler age, they may not understand it. As they grow up a little more, they would. And then when they become teenagers, you can have conversations with them,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, that's
So
right.
let me break it into three. When you're a parent of a toddler who has no understanding of anything, I I had somebody who was also very frustrated. I think the person was an educator on Instagram. Was very frustrated and said, "Parenting is not just a noun; it's also a verb. Parent says be the parent as a noun, but also parent as a verb.
That's right.
So when you have toddlers, you parent them, right? You show them this is a boundary, and that is why people are making money from these things. Sometimes they have play areas and they've raised certain boundaries and they put all the fluffy balls in there so the kid knows I cannot even go beyond this. Let me just have my freedom in this little space. I mean, I think parents who have toddlers would understand what I mean.
That's
We
right.
create, even the cot they sleep in has a boundary so that they don't roll over and fall. Sometimes
That's
when we are
right.
leaving them on the bed, we put pillows around them. So we make a boundary. So when they are toddlers, you may not be able to explain it to them, but you will parent them by being alert and being proactive to make sure that they have some freedoms, but they are not falling over. Now, they also need to learn from example. So they finished playing with their toys, right? They have a play space. Are you teaching them to park the toys? Do it with them, sing along with them, park it at a point. By the age of 2, 3, they do it themselves. They know that, hey, when I play with my Lego, I play with my small whatevers and finish, I need to pick it up because, yes, mom is going to say it several times to remind them. Give them a routine. Children thrive in what we call a routine. When you're giving them a routine, you are giving them a boundary. Psychologically, when children don't grow up with a routine, they get very confused. It causes a lot of anxiety. So when you have to wake up at a certain time, brush your teeth at a certain time, lay your bed, do this, clean up after yourself, all those things. You don't touch screen at this time, you do this at this time. They get used to it. Gradually they grow into it. When I was growing up, my mother has only 2 biological kids, but she raised so many people, so many I can't count. And one of the things she did, and when I was growing up, I had a cousin and then I had a friend who's like a sister. She raised three girls like at the same time and others. But just with the three of us, there's something she did. We weren't teenagers, but when we were growing up, all up until we became teenagers, I noticed something my mother did. My mother was a very great educator, by the way.
Okay, so it's in the
She would
family.
always leave notes. Okay, so everybody, especially when Saturdays we will wake up, we had times to wake up, but Saturdays maybe we had to wake up a little later, 7 or something, because she wanted her to sleep more. But sometimes you wake up and she's gone, very busy. Either she's gone for a conference or a funeral, or my dad, nobody's there. So you wake up and you know exactly where she's left the note. And everybody, what we have to do, sometimes with timestamps. I know it's funny, but it helped us. And
That's
then she
right.
will leave a note under it. By the time I come back at this time, blah, 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 should be done. You silly three. And we still call ourselves silly three till this day. But one day I was also having to leave my children. I said, I think I'm going to try this thing mommy did with us. I'll leave notes. So I gave them a routine, and that routine, they lived it for years. Until now, I don't leave them any note. They know what they are doing. I've had people who come to stay with me in my house, and then when I come back, they will tell me, hey, you did everything. Oh." I asked them, have you done your reading? Said, yes, just like mom said. Have you done? And they've exactly, they've done it. I said, yes. Because when you give them a routine and you set the boundaries, it gives you, the parent, freedom. I don't have to worry about, are they doing A? Are they doing B? No. It's in them. They just follow it. A few checks here and there, but otherwise they are doing it. So it's important that as they grow, you instill it in them, because when they keep doing it, it gives you, the parent, freedom.
When you explain the fact that there should be, that establishment of routine for the kids
Yes,
and all that,
yes, yes.
this is just gonna veer off a little bit because I've seen situation where mom and dad may not be on the same page. Maybe
Yes.
mom is that strict, but dad is not.
Oh, yes.
Dad is so lenient. So in situations like that, where one is trying to enforce the rules and one is so lenient and would always say, "It's okay, this is time for bed. It's 8:30."
Mhm.
But maybe the child is watching television and then maybe and the dad wants, "Oh, okay, you know what, let her watch it maybe next 5 minutes." What advice would you have, for such parents who may be listening to us?
This is a very important question. When it comes to parenting, and there are two parents in the home, you need to have a conversation. If you are not together, there's going to be a problem. You are going to set your children against one person, and that's not what you want in a home. I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen homes where you say that the mother is strict, the father is not, or the father is strict, the mother is not. And hey, we are two different people coming from two different backgrounds, coming together to form a unit, an institution called marriage. We can never be the same, but there has to be a conversation. How do we want to raise our children? What do we want to do about this situation? What do we do about consequences? What do we do if you are not on a unified front in this thing? It doesn't work. You don't have to be hard like mom. Or mom, you don't have to be hard like dad. Just agree and support when you can. So if dad says it's 8:30 and we agreed that during the week they go to school, right? So if we've agreed that during the week no TV for kids, that's what we've agreed on.
That's right.
The kids, as they grow up, they don't even think about it that I should watch TV. Or during the week, you sleep at 8:30. My children sleep at 8:30 during the week. And no, I'm not kidding. They sleep at 8:30 during the week.
That's right.
Okay? And we've agreed. So if I'm not there, dad will make sure it happens. If dad is not there, I make sure it happens. Okay, what is it over the weekends? Weekends is a little bit more lax. What time do they sleep? 9:30. Or you want to say 10, depending on how Maybe they are twins now, or they are early teenagers, or whatever. But there has to be an agreement. I have seen this fall apart and affect kids in a way that breaks my heart. So I'm really pleading with parents here that you must agree, come to a compromise. If there's a disagreement, discuss it, hash it out, and settle on something. Because when you settle on something, you are helping the child to follow a routine so that he doesn't get anxious. Anxiety is killing a lot of the young people we have right now. I've had kids who sit in my classroom and anxiety is just taking over, and it sinks into depression because they are not sure what they are doing.
That's right.
They sit down and they are just fidgety. They're just anxious. Sometimes they are just breathing. I've seen it all. They need to take a moment. They need to take a break. They need stability. They need routine. It just helps. Psychology has found out, research has seen it, that routine helps children. That is why when you get into the education space, routine is so important. Look, it's so important till kids are even 18. Routine. So when you are being evaluated as a teacher to the highest level, if they come to your classroom and there's no routine, you failed.
Wow.
And this is even high school. It happens kindergarten, primary, elementary, middle school. It's so important. And so why should we have it in the school? Why shouldn't we have it in the home? I think yesterday in one of my articles, I talked about bringing it home. And I said that there's certain things you would do as an educator for children because it helps them in that space. Why shouldn't we bring it home? Because when we bring it home, when they go to school and they find that there are boundaries, it's easier. Because there's so many boundaries in schools, their expectations. They don't get into trouble. They're so used to it. They understand that there's a way to behave and there's a way not to behave. They understand that I can touch this, I can't touch that. They understand that, hey, I don't want anybody to touch me, and I've communicated it well. So they're not physically abused. But people who don't know it grow up and they are abused everywhere, including in marriage. If we understand it, there's going to be some peace. Do you think so?
Definitely. I mean, yeah, I think you mentioned how boundaries can create more freedom,
Yes.
right? It seemed like counterintuitive, right?
Yes.
And counterproductive. Okay. But how can, boundaries create more freedom and for our children and the safety that we are talking about?
It still comes to examples. Let me give you more examples.
Sure.
When my children grew up a little maybe 9, then my son again will ask, but mom, why do we have to sleep at 8:30? So I said, okay, have you seen that when you go to school, some kids sleep? He said, yes. I said, do you know why they sleep? They don't have the right amount of sleep. So they are struggling. They are just, teacher is teaching and they are gone. You have to wake them up, or some kids are laughing at them. They have not slept or had enough sleep. And it could be anything. And sometimes it's even worse in teenagers. So now you've pointed the risk to them. So they see, ooh, so this is why I have to sleep at this time. I'm energetic when I wake up. This is why I have to do this. This is why I have to do this. Another time, I always laugh at my son and I say that he's the dishwasher I bought so many years ago that now has become very useful. And we laugh about it because, look, he's a great dishwasher. It doesn't matter what you're doing. He knows how I like it. He will wash it, clean it with lemon. The whole place will be clean. And he's a little boy, you know. So I said to him, don't you feel good when you contribute to the house and you help us? I feel very good.
That's right.
And I make them see they are helpful. They are important to me. They are very, very. Yesterday I came back from school. What's school? No, we went somewhere. When we got back, I told him, he got out of there. I said, Jay, the car is dirty. I said, Mom, the car is not dirty, because he knew who was going to clean it, right? I says, Mom, there's nothing wrong. I said, oh, it's dirty. Come on, come and clean it up for me. So he cleaned it. I wasn't there. Initially, that was the first time he cleaned my car. Initially, I was having second thoughts. It's like, will he be able to do it? Will he do it like I wanted? Because sometimes I'm a neat freak. You know, said, just trust the boy, because we have to trust them as we give them the limit. So we open it up. Okay. It's not every time that is tied. As they are growing, you open it up. You give them the freedom and you open it up. So there's something I call measured freedom. You're giving them freedom, but it's measured. So I said, okay, I'm going upstairs. You just do it. So he did it. He came back in less than 20 minutes. And I said, Jay, did you do it well? He says, oh yeah, I did. I said, are you sure? Says, Mom, I've been gone for 18 minutes. I did it well. I said, okay, I trust you. In fact, he said, oh, you don't trust that? I said, I trust you. Then I kept quiet. Right. But today my husband had to use my car. So when he went and came back, I said, was the car clean? He said, yes. And when my husband says it's clean, it's clean. He said, oh, wow. Then Jay, then I gave him a thumbs up or something. I said, well done. He says, oh, Mom, so you didn't trust that I did it well? I said, you did it well. I gave him limits in that thing to operate. And the fact that he knows I trust him now would even make him want to do it more.
That's right.
Okay. So now I've given him limits, but I've measured the limit. What am I going to ask him to do next? Is it possible that next time I can give him a little more hours to do something without my involvement? And then he will see that I've done it. And when I did it within those limits, I'm safe. God has given us our will, isn't it?
That's right.
But when he gives the will and he gives the choice, he will encourage you. Choose life. When he gave the instructions to the Israelites, and Moses was giving it to them, he says, I lay before you this day good and life, evil and death. Then when you go on, he says, but I urge you to choose life. However, if you don't choose it, what happens? I mean, there will be consequences.
That's right.
But I'm not coming to sit on your neck for you to choose the life. No, that's not what God does to us. So why should any human being do that to us?
That's right.
So there are limits. But there's freedom. The limit within which, if you do it right, then you don't have the bad consequences. If you do it wrong and you flout the expectation, there are bad consequences that comes to you.
At what point in time is it okay to involve our children in setting the boundaries?
At every level, you can really engage your kids. As an African parent, sometimes it can get irritating. We are not used to it. Or you grew up in a time where they will tell you because I said so.
What are common mistakes that you've noticed on the part of parents, making sure that those boundaries evolve as their kids grow?
I think inconsistency. Boundaries do not work when you are inconsistent. Another challenge is when you are trying to raise your children and then family gets in. Religion is another hurdle we have to find a way to overcome.
So as a parent, what's the toughest conversation as far as boundaries are concerned, or boundaries is concerned, that you've had with either your child or maybe a student?
I think that it has to do with...
Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you've gained some clarity on why boundaries are important for our kids' development. Next week, we'll be diving into practical ways on how to set these boundaries as parents. See you then, and God richly bless you.
I just wanna give this sermon. I can't put none of it to work. Yeah.